I was already inside the hospital when it started. That matters. I wasn't running toward anything. I didn't hear about it online or see it crawl across a screen. I was sitting in a plastic chair with one cracked leg, pressed against a beige wall that smelled like disinfectant and old sweat, waiting for my name to be called. The emergency room was over capacity. Stretchers lined the walls. People stood because there were no seats left. A man coughed until his face went red. A woman argued with a nurse about how long she'd been waiting. Somewhere behind a curtain, someone was crying in short, broken bursts like they were trying not to be heard. The TV bolted to the corner ceiling was on mute. A news anchor's mouth moved without sound. Nobody looked up. Time dragged. Nurses moved fast but looked tired. Security walked back and forth, hands resting near their belts. Every few minutes, the automatic doors slid open and more people came in. Then the sirens outside didn't stop. At first it was just one, then another, then more, close enough together that the sound flattened into a constant wail. The doors kept opening. Gurneys rolled in. Paramedics shouted vitals. Blood showed up on sheets, on gloves, on shoes. That was when they brought the man in strapped to a gurney. Security was with him. 2 of them, tight on either side, gripping the rails. Their faces were hard in a way I hadn't seen before. The man was screaming. Not words, just sound tearing out of his throat. His eyes rolled white. Blood ran from his nose and mouth and soaked into the pillow beneath his head. A nurse stepped in close and told him to breathe. She reached for his shoulder. He bit her. His teeth sank into her forearm and locked. She screamed once, sharp and high. The man thrashed hard enough to rock the gurney. The straps creaked. Someone shouted for restraints. Someone else yelled to clear the room. I stood up without thinking and pressed myself flat against the wall as people backed into me. The nurse stumbled away, clutching her arm. Blood ran between her fingers and dripped onto the tile. She took 3 steps, then collapsed. Her body hit hard. Her face went gray fast. Her eyes rolled back, showing too much white. She started shaking. Not small tremors, full body convulsions that slapped her shoes against the floor. Then she stopped. For a second I thought that was it. She got back up. Not all the way, just enough. One knee under her, one hand dragging across the tile, leaving a smear of blood. Her eyes fixed on the nearest person. She lunged and drove her teeth into a man's neck. Blood sprayed the wall in a wide arc. It hit a sign and ran down in thin lines. The man dropped without a sound, hands fluttering once before they went still. The room broke. People ran. Chairs tipped. Someone slipped on blood and cracked their head on the floor. The screaming piled up until it drowned out everything else. A security guard drew his pistol. His hands shook so badly. He fired twice into the nurse's chest. The shots were deafening indoors. She barely reacted. She stumbled, then kept coming. She hit him and took him down. Her mouth worked at his face, Skin tore loose under her teeth. I heard it. Wet. Ripping. He screamed until his voice collapsed into choking sounds. Another guard rushed in and tackled her from the side. They slammed into the triage desk. He grabbed her head and smashed it into the corner. Once. Twice. The third hit broke something. Her skull split open. She went slack immediately. Nobody moved. Blood spread across the floor in slow streams and crept toward my shoes. The smell hit next. Copper and waste, and something sour underneath it. The intercom crackled overhead. A calm voice told everyone to remain where they were. A lockdown was being initiated as a precaution. Doors would seal automatically to ensure safety. I stared at the dead nurse's chest. It didn't rise. Somewhere deeper in the hospital, something heavy slammed into a door. Then again, that was when I understood we weren't waiting anymore. The lockdown didn't feel like safety. It felt like the building tightening its grip. The lights dimmed, then steadied. A low chime rolled through the ceiling speakers. Doors along the ER corridor clicked at the same time, a flat mechanical sound, like teeth setting. A nurse shouted for everyone to stay put. Nobody listened. People rushed the main entrance. The glass doors didn't open. Hands slapped against them. Someone tried to pry them apart. They didn't budge. Outside, I could see police lights washing the street red and blue, but no one was coming in. Security started yelling. They formed a line that lasted about 10 seconds. Something came screaming out of a side hallway. It was a patient in a gown, barefoot, IV line still taped to his arm. He ran wrong. Too fast. Head snapping side to side like he was tracking every sound at once. A woman didn't move fast enough. He hit her and drove her into the wall. His teeth went into her cheek. She shrieked and tried to claw him off. He tore a chunk free when he pulled back. Her face opened up, skin hanging, blood pouring down her neck. Someone fired. I don't know who. The shot went wide and punched into the wall. The patient didn't even flinch. The infected hit the man who fired. It took him low, teeth sinking into his leg, anchoring him in place. He screamed and fired again, this time into its head. The back of its skull burst and sprayed the wall behind it. The sound echoed. More came immediately. They piled onto him, dragging him down as he kept screaming. I backed away and ran straight into a crash cart. A nurse grabbed my arm and dragged me with her. We ducked into a treatment corridor where stretchers were jammed nose to tail. A doctor was there, shaking, holding a fire extinguisher like he didn't know what else to do. 2 patients were with him. One was crying. One was praying. The intercom came on again. Same calm voice. Internal quarantine. Certain areas restricted. Elevators offline except for authorized use. Then the screaming started somewhere above us. A man in scrubs came sprinting down the corridor, face white, eyes gone. He slammed into the doctor. They both went down. The extinguisher clattered across the floor. The man in scrubs bit straight into the doctor's throat. There was no hesitation, just teeth and weight. Blood fountained. The doctor's hands fluttered uselessly against the man's shoulders. The praying patient tried to help. He grabbed the attacker's head and shoved. The man in scrubs turned and bit into his wrist instead. Hard. The bone cracked. I heard it. The patient screamed and collapsed. I picked up the extinguisher and swung it with both hands. It hit the man in scrubs in the shoulder. He barely noticed. I swung again, chest. Nothing. The nurse with me screamed for me to hit his head. I did. I brought it down on his face. The first hit broke his nose. The second crushed his mouth. The third split his skull and dropped him. When I stopped, my arms were shaking so hard I almost dropped the extinguisher. The bitten patient on the floor was already convulsing. We ran. The elevators were dead. Every call button glowed red and did nothing. Stairwells were the only way. We pushed through a fire door just as something slammed into it from the other side. Hands punched through the narrow safety glass. Fingers snapped and bent backward as they clawed. On the stairs, it was chaos. People going up. People trying to go down. Blood smeared on the railings. Someone fell and got trampled. Nobody stopped. Halfway up, a woman collapsed against the wall, clutching her neck. Bite marks. Deep. She begged us not to leave her. She was shaking already. The nurse looked at me, eyes empty, and shook her head once. We left her. She screamed as we reached the next landing. Then the scream cut off. At the next door, a security guard was trying to hold it shut. He was bleeding from his scalp. He shouted that the floor was compromised, that it was full. Something hit the door from the other side hard enough to bow it inward. We ran again. By the time we reached the upper floors, the hospital wasn't a place anymore. It was just corridors and noise and things moving too fast. Whatever this was, it wasn't contained, and the building knew it. The lights went out, not all at once. They stuttered. Half the hallway dropped into shadow, the other half buzzing like insects trapped in glass. Then the generators kicked in with a deep thud that shook the floor. Emergency lights came up red and dim. Alarms started howling somewhere far off and never stopped. The nurse kept pulling me. The smell changed as we went. Bleach and alcohol gave way to iron and shit. Doors stood open where they shouldn't have been. Curtains ripped down and trampled. We hit the ICU by accident. Beds were jammed into the hall. People wedged between them, shouting and stumbling as alarms screamed. Machines beeped without rhythm. A patient was strapped down, arms pinned, legs bucking hard enough to rock the bed. His face was purple. Foam bubbled at his mouth. A respiratory therapist leaned over him, hands shaking, trying to fix a tube that wouldn't stay in. The patient snapped the restraints. Plastic cracked. Metal bent. He lunged and caught the therapist by the shoulder. Teeth sank in. She screamed and tried to pull away, but he dragged her down onto the bed. Blood soaked the sheets in seconds. The machine screamed louder. Someone rushed him with a chair. It hit the patient's chest and bounced. Another person stabbed with a pen. It broke off in skin. The patient didn't slow. I grabbed a wall-mounted oxygen wrench and swung. I hit his ribs. I felt them give. He turned on me immediately, eyes empty, mouth working. The nurse shoved me sideways and took the hit meant for my face. He bit into her neck. She didn't scream. She just made a sound like air leaking. I brought the wrench down on his head. Once. Twice. The third strike caved his skull in and dropped him across the bed. Brain matter smeared the pillow. His body twitched and went still. The nurse slid down the wall. Her hands shook. Blood poured between her fingers. She tried to say something and couldn't get it out. Her eyes rolled back. The shaking started almost immediately. Hard. Violent. I didn't stay to watch her finish turning. We ran again and others fell in with us from side rooms and halls. Anyone still moving pulled into the same surge. The generators coughed and the lights flickered. Entire sections went dark. Emergency doors slammed shut on timers, sealing off hallways at random. Each one that closed funneled us tighter, louder, closer to the noise. We turned a corner and nearly ran straight into a crash. 2 orderlies were wrestling an infected woman to the floor. She was still in a hospital gown, soaked red. One of them slipped. She bit his forearm down to the bone. He screamed and tried to pull back. She held on, jaw locked, shaking her head until something tore. The other orderly raised a fire axe and brought it down into her shoulder. It sank deep and stuck. She didn't react. She reached up with her free hand and clawed his face open. Skin peeled. Blood ran into his mouth. I grabbed the axe handle and yanked. It came free, with a wet sound. I swung again and buried it in the side of her head. The blade punched through and stuck in the wall behind her. When I pulled it out, part of her scalp came with it. She dropped. The bitten orderly hit the floor seconds later. His eyes went glassy. He started to convulse. We left him. Everywhere we went, the same pattern repeated. People tried to help. Helping got them killed. Weapons that weren't aimed at the head did nothing but slow things down for a second. A man with a broken leg crawled out of a room and begged us not to leave him. An infected nurse stepped out behind him and grabbed his ankle. She dragged him back inside. The door swung shut. The screaming cut off fast. The alarms changed tone. Fire doors started closing automatically, slicing the hospital into sections. We were herded without anyone telling us where to go. Every wrong turn ended in a sealed door or a wall of bodies. Someone fired a gun again. The echo rolled through the floors like a bell. The sound pulled everything toward us. A woman tripped on a body and went down hard. Before anyone could grab her, hands were on her. She vanished under weight. I saw her face once, mouth open, eyes wide. Then it was gone. The stairwell sign glowed red ahead of us. We didn't talk about it, we just moved. The pressure from behind forced us upward. Every landing was slick with blood. Railings were bent. The smell was unbearable. Halfway up, a man ahead of us started screaming. He'd been bitten on the calf. He dropped to his knees and tried to crawl. His skin was already going pale. The change hit him before he made it 10 feet. He turned and lunged at the nearest person. They smashed his head against the concrete wall until it burst. By the time we reached the next floor, there was no sense of where we were anymore. Just numbers on walls and doors that wouldn't open. The hospital wasn't failing. It had already failed. And it was pushing us up because there was nowhere else left. The stairwell swallowed us. It was narrower than it should have been. Concrete walls sweating moisture. Paint flaking in long strips where hands had scraped it raw. The smell trapped itself in there. Blood, piss, burned dust from the generators. Every step echoed wrong, too loud, bouncing up and down the shaft, so you couldn't tell where anything was anymore. Bodies clogged the landings. Some were dead. Some weren't finished yet. People had fallen and never gotten back up. Shoes were missing. One man lay twisted sideways across the steps, his leg bent where it shouldn't bend. Someone had stepped on his face hard enough to split it open. He didn't move. We climbed because there was no space to go back. A fire door above us slammed shut with a heavy metal bang. The sound rolled down the stairwell and people screamed, thinking they were trapped. Someone slammed their shoulder into the door. It didn't give. Through the wired glass, I could see a chain looped tight around the handle on the other side. Whoever put it there hadn't done it carefully. They'd wrapped it fast and locked it. We turned upward again. The climb burned, legs shaking, lungs tearing. Every few steps, someone slipped on blood and nearly went down. If they fell all the way, nobody would stop. Nobody could. A woman ahead of me was carrying a kid, maybe 6 or 7. He wasn't crying. His head lolled against her shoulder, eyes half open. When she stumbled, the kid slid from her arms and hit the steps head first. The sound was dull, wrong. She screamed and tried to pick him up. Something came out of the stairwell door below us. It was fast. It slammed into her back and drove her into the railing. The kid rolled down 2 steps and stopped. Teeth went into the woman's neck. She dropped him completely and tried to turn, but the thing held on and kept biting. Blood sprayed the wall in thin fans. Someone grabbed the kid and ran. I didn't see who. We kept climbing. The next few floors blurred together. Numbers stenciled on the walls. Exit signs flickering. Doors that wouldn't open. On one landing, a man had tried to wedge a gurney across the stairs. It was twisted sideways now, wheels broken, jammed with bodies tangled underneath it. We had to climb over them. My hand slipped on wet skin. I almost went down. Above us, glass shattered. Someone screamed and fell past the railing, hit a lower landing, and didn't move again. No one looked down long enough to check. The sound outside changed as we climbed. At first it was just sirens. Then something heavier cut through it. A low chopping noise, steady and distant. Helicopters. They weren't close, but they were real. Heads tilted up. People started yelling, voices breaking. For a few seconds it felt like direction. We hit a floor where the lights still worked. Not bright, but better than red emergency glow. Offices. Waiting rooms. A locked door with no damage on it yet. Someone forced it open with a crash cart and we spilled inside. The room was small, carpeted, chairs stacked against the wall, a whiteboard with yesterday's schedule still written on it. About 10 of us fit before there was no more space. We blocked the door with whatever we could find. Nobody talked. People leaned against the walls and slid down until they were sitting. One man vomited into his hands and just let it spill between his fingers. A woman rocked back and forth, whispering a name over and over. The kid sat in the corner with blood in his hair, staring at nothing. Something hit the door once, then again. The hinges held. For the first time since it started, there was a pause. Through the window, I could see the sky had gone dark. Not night yet, just that heavy blue before it drops all the way. The helicopter noise passed overhead and faded. Hope crept in anyway. Not loud, not spoken, just the idea that being higher meant being closer to help. The door shook again. Wood cracked. We didn't wait for it to fail. When it broke fast. The barricade slid. The door bowed inward. Hands forced through the gap. Skin tearing on splinters. Someone screamed and fired a gun inside the room. The shot deafened us. The thing at the door took the round in the head and dropped, skull bursting across the frame. We ran back into the stairwell, boots and feet pounding up from below. More coming. We hit another landing and kept moving. Boots slipping, breath tearing, the noise still chasing us from below. The stairs thinned as we climbed. Fewer voices, more space between footsteps. The pounding from below stayed steady, heavier now, boots and bare feet mixing into one noise that climbed with us. A sign on the wall said roof access arrow. Someone hit it with their hand as they ran past, like touching it would make it real. The PA crackled overhead, not the calm hospital voice this time. A different cadence. Outside coordination, short phrases stepping on each other. CDC mentioned once like a label, not a promise. No instructions for us, just traffic. That did it. People started moving faster, not smarter, faster. The door to the upper stairwell was jammed half open by a body wedged against it. He was still alive, barely. His jaw worked soundlessly, teeth clicked. Someone kicked him hard in the ribs to clear the gap. Bone cracked. He folded enough for us to squeeze through. The next landing opened into a service level. Pipes ran low along the ceiling. Heat blasted from somewhere unseen. The air tasted burned. A pair of infected burst from a side corridor when we crossed it, drawn by the sound. One went down to a head strike with a wrench. The other took a blade through the eye socket and kept moving until a second blow crushed the back of its skull. It dropped and didn't get up. We didn't stop to check. The roof access door was ahead. Steel, red painted. A small wired window clouded with grime. Someone tried the handle. Locked. A shape slammed into us from behind. It was a man who'd tripped on the last landing. He came in sideways and took 2 people down with him. As they fell, the noise surged up the stairs. Shadows stacked below. Hands reached the railing. Someone fired down the stairwell. The shot sparked off concrete and vanished. The sound pulled the rest of them faster. We turned and held. There was no room for clean swings, just weight and angles. Someone shoved a mop handle into an open mouth and jammed it until teeth snapped. Another brought a fire axe down too shallow and had to wrench it free as fingers clawed at his forearm. A woman went down screaming when a hand caught her ankle. She was dragged back a step before someone crushed the infected's head against the wall. Blood sheeted down the concrete. My arms burned. Every hit took more than it should have. One infected took 3 blows before the skull split. Another went limp after one good strike and was trampled anyway as we kept moving. The handle on the roof door rattled as someone worked it with a tool. Metal scraped. The pounding from below climbed closer. Footsteps. Breathing. The PA crackled again. Same outside traffic. Same clipped voices. No words for us. The lock gave. The door swung inward and cold air hit my face hard enough to make my eyes water. The smell changed instantly. Tar and rain and exhaust. Night wind. People surged through and stumbled onto the roof. It wasn't empty. Floodlights ringed the far edge, white and harsh. Vehicles idled beyond the parapet. Figures moved in suits that caught the light and threw it back dull. Someone waved. Someone else raised a hand, palm out. A man behind me tried to shout. His voice broke. The stairwell door behind us slammed as another infected hit it. The sound carried across the roof and came back wrong, hollow. We spread without thinking, dragging the injured clear of the doorway. Someone dropped to their knees and pressed their forehead to the concrete. Another laughed once and stopped. The wind picked up. Plastic flapped somewhere. A helicopter passed overhead, low enough to shake grit loose from the parapet, then kept going. No one came closer. The door at our backs rattled again. We turned to face it, breathing hard, weapons slick in our hands, the cold cutting through sweat as the noise from below climbed the stairs toward us. The roof didn't save us. It just gave us space to see. Cold wind cut through the sweat on my back. The lights were too bright, bleaching everything flat. Beyond the parapet, vehicles sat in a loose ring, engines idling. Their headlights were pointed away from us, lighting the street and the lower facade, not the roof. Men and women in pale suits moved with purpose, faces hidden behind clear shields. They didn't look surprised to see us. Someone ran to the parapet and waved both arms. Another banged a metal pipe against the concrete, hard and fast. A few of us shouted until our throats burned. Hands went up. Phones came out. Screens glowed and shook. Nothing changed. A loudspeaker crackled from somewhere below the edge of the roof. Not the hospital PA. A different system. Flat. Compressed. "This facility is under containment," the voice said. "Remain where you are. Do not attempt to exit." People froze. Someone yelled back, swearing, begging in the same breath. A man pointed at the stairwell door and screamed that it wasn't holding. He was right. The handle rattled again, metal screaming against its frame. Another voice came over the loudspeaker. closer this time. No evacuation is authorized. We surged toward the far side of the roof, where a service ladder dropped to a lower maintenance platform. It was bolted in place and locked with a thick steel bar. 2 people threw their weight against it. The bar held. Someone tried a wrench. The bolt didn't turn. At the edge nearest the vehicles, a woman tried to climb the parapet. A man in a suit stepped forward and raised a hand, palm out. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just shook his head once. The helicopter came back, low and loud. For a second, the downdraft flattened us, grit stinging our eyes. It didn't slow. It didn't circle. It passed and was gone. The loudspeaker spoke again. All exits are sealed. The stairwell door bucked inward. The barricade we'd dragged across it slid an inch, then another. Fingers forced through the gap, skin tearing on the edge. Someone brought a blade down and cut until the hand came free at the wrist. The body behind it didn't stop pushing. We turned back to the door. There was no clean way to do it. We hit until skulls broke. One infected went down to a head strike and was crushed under the others that followed. Another took a blade through the eye and kept moving until a second blow split the back of its head. Blood slicked the concrete and ran toward the drain. Behind us, boots scuffed. The people in suits were backing away from the parapet. Not fast. Measured. Lights shifted as vehicles repositioned, opening space between the building and the street. The ring widened. Someone screamed that they were leaving us. No one answered. The loudspeaker clicked on one last time. Do not attempt to breach containment. It went silent. We pushed the last infected back through the doorway and slammed what was left of the barricade into place. The door bowed and held for the moment. We stood there heaving, hands shaking, weapons slipping in blood. A man ran to the edge and threw something, his phone, maybe, over the parapet. It fell and vanished. No one looked up. The suits were already farther away. Lights dimmed as engines turned. One by one, vehicles pulled back, their sound swallowed by distance. The roof felt bigger without them, emptier. The door rattled again, harder this time. The frame groaned. We didn't talk about escape anymore. We shifted our feet, checked our grips, and watched the gap where the door was already starting to give. The shouting burned out first. People tried anyway. They yelled at the suits until their voices cracked. They pounded on the parapet. One man kicked the service ladder until his foot slipped and he went down hard, howling. No one helped him up. Everyone was watching the stairwell door. It hit again. The barricade slid a finger width. Nails squealed. Someone shoved a table leg into the gap and leaned their weight into it. The door bowed and held. For now. A woman lost it. She grabbed a pipe and ran at the edge, screaming that she was done. 2 of us caught her before she climbed. She fought until her strength burned out, then sagged, sobbing into the concrete. No one spoke to her. The first infected broke through on the 3rd impact. The door frame split and a shoulder forced through, then an arm. Teeth snapped at air. Someone smashed the arm with a wrench until bone cracked and the hand went slack. Another head pushed into the opening, face skinned raw on the splintered wood. A blade came down into the temple. The skull gave. The body jammed the gap and bought us seconds. Ammo was already thin. A man checked his magazine and shook it like that would make more appear. He fired anyway when another head showed, the round punching through an eye socket and dropping it back down the stairs. The echo rang across the roof and came back wrong. More hands reached. We fell into work. No talking. Just angles and weight. Someone used a fire axe until the handle snapped. Another swung a length of conduit, both hands, until his wrists failed and he dropped it. I took a hit to the shoulder when an infected slipped through the gap and slammed into me. The impact knocked the air out of my chest. Teeth snapped inches from my face. I drove the butt of a wrench up under the jaw and kept pushing until the neck bent the wrong way. The head popped loose with a wet crack. I felt it spray my cheek. Pain came after. My arm went numb. Blood soaked my sleeve. It didn't slow me enough to stop. A man stepped forward and didn't step back. He was older than most of us, gray hair matted with blood. He shoved past, jammed his shoulder into the door, and yelled for us to move. When another body hit the gap, he met it head-on and wrapped his arms around it. He drove them both backward and disappeared down the stairs. We heard him once, then nothing. The pressure eased. Not gone, just lighter. The door stopped bucking. We dragged what was left of the barricade back into place and braced it with our bodies until our legs shook. When we pulled away, the roof felt wrong, smaller, colder. The woman with the pipe sat where she'd fallen, staring at her hands. The injured man tried to stand and failed. Someone tied his leg with a strip, rip torn from a shirt, and told him not to look at it. He didn't. We took stock without saying the words. No radios, no ammo to spare. Too many wounded. The suits had pulled back from the edge, clustered farther out by the vehicles. Engines stayed running. Lights stayed on. The ladder was still locked. Another impact thudded against the door below, weaker than before. Footsteps moved down the stairs instead of up. They were spreading. The only open path left was down. A maintenance hatch sat flush with the roof near the parapet, painted over and forgotten. Someone pried it open with a wrench. Warm air breathed out. A ladder disappeared into darkness. We looked at each other. One by one, people went. I went last. My shoulder burned. My hands shook. I climbed down into the heat and the dark, pulled the hatch shut above me, and listened as the roof went quiet. The noise of the hospital swallowed me again. Below, something moved. We came off it in a spill, boots scraping, hands grabbing for balance. The air was used down here. Warm, wet. It tasted like oil and rust and something sweet that burned the back of my throat. The hatch slammed shut above us and the roof noise vanished, replaced by the low thrum of machinery buried in the building. No one spoke. Footsteps echoed below, slow, uneven. Pipes knocked as something brushed them. The sound drifted and faded, then came back again from another direction. We stayed tight to the wall and waited until it passed. The corridor ran narrow and low, pipes crowding the ceiling, cable trays rattling when we moved. Emergency lights were still on, spaced too far apart, leaving long gaps of shadow between us. We moved as a knot, injured in the middle, weapons out where they could swing. The gas started without warning. Not a blast. A hiss that crept along the ceiling. The lights flickered and steadied. The smell hit hard. Throats burned. Eyes watered. Someone dropped to a knee and gagged. We went low together and crawled, dragging the wounded, keeping heads down until the air thinned enough to breathe. Above us, alarms changed tone. We didn't see the infected die. We heard it. Bodies hitting concrete. A wet, heavy thud as things fell and didn't get back up. Coughing, choking. Then the hiss and the hum swallowed it all. When we stood, we leaned on each other. My shoulder screamed when I put weight on it. Someone wrapped it tighter and shoved me forward. A door stood open ahead, bent on its hinges. Beyond it was a service bay stacked with crates and wrapped pallets. Labels peeled, dates crossed out. We pushed through and tripped over bodies that didn't move. Faces slack, eyes blistered and split. Whatever they pumped in upstairs had worked. We didn't stop. A tunnel sloped away from the bay, low enough that we had to crouch. It smelled like earth. Real earth. Damp. We followed it because it was the only place that didn't feel like the hospital anymore. The tunnel ended at a steel grate. Light bled through the bars. Gray and thin. Dawn. Hands went to the lock. A wrench bit and something snapped. The grate swung out and we spilled into wet grass, coughing, laughing once and then stopping. We lay there until breathing slowed. The city sounded wrong, too quiet, too ordered. The street nearby had been cleaned, blood gone, glass gone. The hospital facade looked untouched. No tape, no lights, just another building catching morning. A white truck rolled past at the end of the block. No markings, it didn't slow. We got up when we could. We tied what we could. We leaned on each other and moved away from the building without looking back. They hadn't stopped it. They'd erased it.